Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm finally talking about a film that I've been meaning to watch for some time now, and that's Free Guy. Free Guy is ultimately about Guy, an NPC or non-playing character in a video game world that begins to realize that his world is all just a simulated reality in which all things are possible. Meanwhile, the makers of the game try desperately to figure out how Guy even exists in the first place, while also preparing for the sequel to the game, which may not be the best thing in the world. So, throughout the last couple of months, when people started to talk about this film, they did so by comparing it to primarily two different films, one being Ready Player One for the video game aspect, the other being The Truman Show. Now, these are vastly different types of movies, and I couldn't think on how in the world it could even be remotely close to The Truman Show. But they weren't wrong. This plays out almost identically to The Truman Show, and I am so glad because I've always been such a big fan of that film. However, strangely enough, I don't really sense too much Ready Player One in this film, other than the fact that it is a video game, and a generic video game quest to rank up. But you know what it felt more like for me? Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, strangely enough. Again, another movie that I love, so already it's interesting enough to impress me. And it does. This film is funny, it's vibrant, it's shot really well, it does a great job convincing the audience that this world isn't just a soundstage or a film production. Even though it is live action, it feels very much like it does take place in a video game. And likewise, when you step out of the game into real life, that feels very different and much more grounded. The editing works very, very well here, especially for the action in the film. And heck, I was also a fan of the soundtrack choices as well. Other than that, you can't really say Ryan Reynolds doesn't fit the role here, because he does. He's funny, he's charming, he's incredibly nice, and just one of those types of characters that make you feel good while watching. In general, I liked this movie, and I had a blast watching it. I'd definitely say it's made to be fun above anything else. If I had to point out some negatives here, it would just be more so on a narrative standpoint, as I had some issues trying to decipher who the protagonist was, since there seems to be two entirely different stories going on simultaneously. The story going on in the game itself with Guy and what he's trying to do, as well as what's going on in the real world with the video game coders and what they are trying to do. These stories somewhat overlap, and it makes me think the protagonist is really the people in the real world, the people in the background. But Guy definitely has a stake in everything as well, obviously. So I don't think the way the narrative is sprawled out is perfect, but really, other than that, I can't say that I have many other negatives. I think the film is worth the watch for sure, especially if you're a fan of video games in general, since there are certain cameos and things that'll make you smile more so if you're into that kind of thing. If you aren't, the cameos here might confuse you a little bit, because it isn't like, Hollywood A-class actor cameos, but more like famous-ish YouTubers that are known to play video games. I mean, that's cool that you got put into a movie and everything, but how important was it at the end of the day? Probably not by much. Other than that, yeah, let's go ahead and break down my final score. From a technical, unbiased perspective, I think that Free Guy is made pretty well. You can kind of see in the trailers on how they shoot this in a way that has that video game vibe. I was wondering if they'd keep doing that throughout the film from beginning to end, and I'd say that here and there, yes, but it's mostly shot in a normal movie way. And I'm glad that they did that, because too much of a good thing can absolutely be a bad thing. So I like the way that it was shot. I like the editing and music choices. The performances were good. The characters were all fleshed out and had some growth. All in all, everything here was mostly pretty good and actually impressive to a degree. This score is 84%. My bias score, just how I personally felt about it, is even higher, because I thought that it was a fun time. I had a smile on my face throughout it, and I especially dug the third act. Lots of just pure entertainment there. This score is 94%, meaning at the end of the day, when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 89%. 89 out of 100 possible stars, or an A- letter grade. Guys, have you seen Free Guy? And if so, lay your thoughts on the film in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1.